No alarm. No phone. No idea what time it is. You just woke up, and today is going to go very, very wrong. This is Marcus. It's 100 AD in ancient Rome, and by the end of today, you'll be begging for your worst Monday back. Marcus lives in what's called an insula, Rome's version of an apartment building. Sounds normal enough. Here's the catch. These buildings were death traps, and everyone who lived in one knew it. Built cheap, built fast, packed with people. And if a fire started on the ground floor, the people on the top floor, where rent was cheapest and where Marcus lives, had almost no way out. There's no plumbing up here. No bathroom. So what does Marcus do when nature calls first thing in the morning? He uses a clay pot, and later, someone will just dump it out the window into the street. This was such a common practice that Roman law actually had rules about it. If the contents of your chamber pot hit a passerby, you could be sued. There's an actual surviving Roman legal case about exactly this. Watch where you're walking was genuine, practical advice in this city, not just a joke. Too late for that guy. Rome did technically have firefighters, a corps called the vigiles, thousands of them patrolling the city at night. Sounds reassuring. Here's the catch. In the earliest version of Roman firefighting, there were accounts of crews showing up to a burning building and simply refusing to help until the owner agreed to sell it to them cheaply, while it was still on fire. By Marcus's time, things were more organized and less predatory, but speed still depended heavily on where you lived. On the 5th floor of a cheap insula, help is on the way was not exactly comforting. Breakfast, if you can call it that, is a piece of bread. Maybe some cheese if he's lucky. No eggs, no bacon, definitely no coffee. Coffee wouldn't reach Europe for over 1,000 years. And here's the fun part. Flour in ancient Rome was ground using stone mills, which meant tiny bits of grit and stone dust ended up in almost every loaf of bread. Archaeologists have actually studied Roman skeletons and found their teeth were worn down way faster than ours, because they were basically eating sandpaper for breakfast every single day. This wasn't rare or unlucky. It shows up again and again in skeletal remains across the empire, rich and poor alike, because everyone was eating bread from the same gritty stone ground flour. Time for work. But Marcus doesn't have a car, a bike, or a bus. He walks. Everyone walks. And the streets of Rome were absolute chaos. Here's something wild. Wheeled vehicles were actually banned from the streets of Rome during daylight hours because of how congested it was. So all deliveries happened at night, which meant if you were trying to sleep, you'd hear carts rattling over stone streets until dawn. There was no such thing as a quiet night in Rome. And forget sidewalks and traffic lights. You just had to hope nobody ran you over. Rome had roughly 1 million people packed into the city by this point. That's more people than lived in London for over 1,000 years afterward. It was loud, it was crowded, and it smelled really, really bad. On his way through, Marcus passes a tax booth, because apparently there's no escaping this anywhere in history. Rome taxed goods moving through the city gates. It taxed market stalls. It even taxed public toilets, a tax so infamous that a Roman emperor's response to it, "Money doesn't smell," is still quoted today, 2,000 years later. Marcus doesn't have anything worth taxing on him. Small mercy. Marcus has survived breakfast, a near-death chariot encounter, and a smell that will haunt him. You'd think the worst is over. It's not even close. Marcus's job today, hauling stone for a construction project. No safety equipment. No gloves. No hard hat. Just raw manpower under the blazing Mediterranean sun. If Marcus were enslaved instead of a free laborer, his situation would be even worse. Brutal hours, no pay, and legal status as property rather than as a person. Around a third of Rome's population at various points were enslaved people. Even as a free peasant, Marcus isn't much better off financially. Many free laborers competed directly with slave labor for the same back-breaking jobs, which kept wages painfully low. And here's a detail that stings more the longer you sit with it. There was no such thing as a weekend. Not yet. Romans got one lighter day roughly every 8 days, a market cycle called the nundini, but for someone doing physical labor like Marcus, 8 days between any kind of break barely counts as rest. The 5-day work week most of the world uses today wouldn't exist anywhere for almost 2,000 more years. And no lunch break in the way we'd think of one. Maybe a quick bite of bread and watered-down wine, because the water itself often wasn't safe to drink straight. You'd assume ancient Rome had terrible water. It didn't. This is one of the most misunderstood things about the empire. Rome built aqueducts so advanced that some of them are still standing 2,000 years later. Genuinely one of the great engineering feats in human history. So here's the twist. Clean water existed. Marcus just wasn't allowed to have it. Rome even had officials whose entire job was managing water rights, deciding who got access to clean aqueduct water and who didn't. That water was funneled to the wealthy, to the public baths, to the ornamental fountains. If you were poor like Marcus, you were stuck with whatever local source you could find, and it wasn't always great. The technology solved the problem. It just didn't solve it for everyone. Midway through the day, Marcus starts feeling sick. Stomach pain. In our world, that's a quick pharmacy run. In Marcus's world, his options are concerning. Here's the part that should actually terrify you. This wasn't backwater quackery. Roman doctors were, in a lot of ways, genuinely ahead of their time. They performed real surgery, set broken bones correctly, and understood that hygiene mattered. This was the respected, educated medical establishment of the ancient world. And they believed something completely wrong, that the body was run by four humors: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. If you were sick, your humors were out of balance. This wasn't superstition on the side. This was the science. So what's the fix for too much blood? Cut the patient open and drain some out. And here's the twist that makes this genuinely unsettling. Bloodletting didn't die out with Rome. It didn't even die out in the Middle Ages. Doctors were still doing this in the 1800s. It lasted nearly 2,000 years, prescribed by some of the most respected physicians in history, right up until we finally figured out it was doing far more harm than good. Let's just say, Marcus does not feel better afterward. If anything, he's now weaker, a little dizzy, and short one clean sleeve. The stomach pain, whatever actually caused it, has been left to sort itself out. After a rough day, Marcus heads to one of Rome's public baths, genuinely one of the best parts of daily life here. Even poor citizens could afford entry, sometimes for practically nothing. But relaxing is relative. These baths were shared by hundreds of strangers at once, same water, all day. Personal space wasn't really a Roman concept. And here's a detail that tends to break people's brains. Romans used a shared sponge on a stick, called a tersorium, to clean themselves after using the toilet, and multiple people used the same one. Yeah, we're going to move on from that one quickly. On his way out, Marcus passes something you'd actually recognize, a public notice board covered in painted announcements. Gladiator fight schedules, lost and found notices, property ads. It's basically Roman social media, painted onto a wall instead of scrolled on a screen. Someone's even scratched a rude joke about a local politician into the corner of it. Some things really don't change in 2,000 years. By the time Marcus gets home, the sun's going down, which matters a lot, because there's no electricity. No light bulbs. Just oil lamps that are expensive to keep burning all night. So once it's dark, life mostly just stops. And of course, his dinner's gone. Eaten by his own goat. No fridge to store food safely, no delivery app, no leftovers. Just an empty pot and a very smug-looking goat. So that's it. That's the day. Robbed of breakfast by bugs. Nearly run over by a chariot. Taxed on the way through the forum. Worked to exhaustion. Treated by a doctor who cut him open on purpose. Bathed with strangers using a communal sponge. And starved by his own livestock. And here's the part that's easy to miss. Marcus isn't unlucky. He's not having a uniquely bad day by Roman standards. Somewhere in this city, on this exact day, hundreds of thousands of people just like him lived through some version of this same routine, and did it again the next day, and the day after that, for their entire lives, without it ever once making it into a history book. And tomorrow, Marcus does it all again. No weekends, no sick days, no vacation, just another sunrise, another rooster, another day exactly like this one, for the rest of his life. So next time your Wi-Fi goes down, or your coffee order gets messed up, or traffic makes you 15 minutes late, remember what I told you at the start. You'd be begging for your worst Monday back after a day like this. Marcus would trade you in a heartbeat. If you want to see what a bad day looked like for a Roman soldier, or a Roman noblewoman, let me know in the comments, because trust me, it gets worse.